Hey everyone, and welcome back. So it sounds like you're thinking about going for a master's degree.
Huge decision.
It really is a ton to consider.
Oh, yeah.
And you are smart enough to send over some research on the return on investment for these degrees? Which is perfect because that's exactly what we're diving into today. It's like, you're standing at the base of this mountain of information
Excellent. Yeah,
and trying to figure out, is the view from the top worth the climb?
that's a great way to put it. And it is a climb that comes with, a pretty hefty price tag.
No kidding. And what are the first things that can jump out at me from the research you sent over? Was the cost. And I don't just mean tuition here, right?
Not even close. You've got that living expenses on top of the two in, and it can easily, climb to over $150,000 for that master's degree.
Wow. Yeah, I remember when I was first looking at grad school, I almost choked when I saw those numbers. But wait, there's more. Your research also brought up this thing called opportunity cost. What is that all about?
Yes. Opportunity costs. It's often overlooked, but it's crucial. Basically, it's the money you could have been earning if you were working instead of in school.
So it's not just the money you're paying for classes and books, but also the income you're missing out on. For those 2 years at least.
Yeah, at least. Could be more.
Could be more. And the research said that could add, like another $120,000 or more to the total. Yikes.
Definitely adds another layer to the whole decision process, doesn't it?
Big time. Suddenly that mountain seems a lot steeper.
It does.
Okay, but let's not get too discouraged just yet. Let's talk about the potential rewards. I mean, people with master's degrees, they do tend to earn more, right?
They do, on average, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk earning power. But your research? It seemed to say it's not as simple as get a master's, get rich. Right.
Definitely not. While it's true that master's degree holders, they earn about 20% more on average, the actual return, it varies a lot depending on what you study.
Okay, so give us the good stuff. Which fields give you the best views and the biggest treasure chests?
Well, the MBA is often considered one of the most rewarding. Recent MBA graduates are seeing median starting salaries around $125,000, often before bonuses even.
Wow. Okay, yeah, that's the view I could get used to, but I'm guessing not all master's degrees have that same golden glow, right?
Right, not all paths lead to the same summit. The research highlighted Master of Arts degrees, the humanities like literature, history. Those grads are seeing median salaries around $60,000.
Okay, yeah, that's a pretty big difference.
Big difference.
So it seems like there's this clear divide between STEM fields and the humanities. In terms of earning potential, I mean, your research, it kept pointing to STEM masters, especially in things like engineering and computer science having a really high ROI.
It makes sense, though, if you think about the demand, the demand for those skills in the job market these days. For instance, engineering grads with a master's degree are seeing median earnings around $116,000. And that's not even counting the potential for, rapid career advancement.
Wow. Right.
And just to give you some context, the median earnings for someone with a bachelor's in engineering are about $92,000.
Okay, so that's like a $24,000 difference. For some people, that extra year or two of school, it could pay for itself pretty quick.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, but I'm also picking up on the vibe that this doesn't mean that humanities master's degrees are worthless, right? Like, there's got to be more to the story than just the money.
Oh, absolutely. There's a whole world of value beyond the financial, and that's something we should definitely dig into.
Okay, I'm excited to hear more about that, but before we totally shift gears, I do want to touch on one more sector that seems to be on a lot of people's minds. Healthcare. Your research mentioned degrees like the Master of Public Health, the MPH, and also the Master of Science in Nursing, MSN.
Yeah.
But it seemed like the ROI for those could be all over the map.
It's true. It's a great example of how even within a sector that's known for good salaries, the ROI really depends on, the specific degree and career path you choose. Got it. So, for example, clinical degrees like that Master of Science in Nursing, particularly for nurse practitioners, those can have fantastic financial returns. We're talking median salaries over $111,000. But, an MPH, it's undoubtedly valuable for a public health career, but it often leads to more moderate earnings, more in the $60,000 to $80,000 range.
Right. So even within healthcare, there are peaks and valleys when it comes to earning potential. I guess it just reinforces that idea. It's not about getting any master's degree, it's about finding the right fit for what you want to do.
Exactly, and that's where things get really interesting.
It's all about the journey, not just the destination.
Exactly. And when you factor in the cost of those degrees, the payback period for something like an MPH with its higher tuition costs and potentially lower starting salary, it could be significantly longer.
Oh, wow. How long are we talking here?
We're talking maybe 10 years or more before you even recoup that investment.
Okay, so that's a pretty long time to be paying off those loans. All right, before we move on to those non-financial benefits you mentioned, I do want to touch on one more area that the research seemed pretty excited about. Business degrees, what's the deal with MBAs? Are they really the golden ticket to high salaries?
Well, the hype isn't entirely unfounded. MAA programs do tend to deliver some of the strongest financial returns you can find. Graduates often see salary increases of 50% or more.
Okay, great. Seriously.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. The research even cited a median salary for MBA holders 5 years after graduation as being $150,000.
Okay, so yeah, that's impressive, but I'm also guessing like with those healthcare degrees, not all MBA programs are created equal.
You're absolutely right. Programs at those top-tier business schools, the ones with big reputations and powerful alumni networks, those tend to command the highest salaries. Those lesser-known programs might offer a decent return, but it might not be quite as, dramatic.
Makes sense. So it's like the difference between climbing Mount Everest and, say, a challenging but less famous peak.
I like that.
You'll get a great view either way, but the bragging rights and maybe the job offers will be different. But even beyond the salary boost, I'm thinking,
For sure.
those networking opportunities and career connections you make at a good business school, that has to add a lot of value that you can't really measure.
Absolutely. The connections you forge and the skills you hone in a strong MBA program can open doors throughout your career. It's about more than just that initial bump in salary. It's about long-term growth and opportunity.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we've talked about those high-flying MBAs, but let's not forget about those social sciences and humanities degrees. The research seemed to suggest that those might lead to, shall we say, less dazzling financial rewards?
Yeah, less dazzling maybe, but
But it's still valuable in their own way, right?
exactly. We talked about those Master Arts degrees, but there are other options in those fields too, like a Master of Social Work, for instance.
Yeah, good point. The research said those degrees cost about $35,708 a year, but result in median earnings closer to $50,000. Right. So maybe not a path to like riches and fame, but does that automatically make those degrees a bad investment overall?
All right. That's the question, isn't it? Remember, ROI is about more than just dollar signs. These fields, they offer a different kind of return, one that's harder to measure, but just as valuable.
So it's not always about chasing the biggest paycheck.
Right? It's like choosing to climb a mountain for the sheer joy of the challenge, the breathtaking views, rather than just focusing on striking gold at the top.
I love that analogy. It reminds us that there's more to life. And to choosing a career path. They're just chasing the money. Okay, so let's dive into those non-economic benefits that the research highlighted. It seemed like there were some pretty compelling reasons to consider a master's degree, even as the financial return isn't massive.
For sure. Things like career advancement, increased job security, even personal fulfillment.
Okay, let's break those down. First up, career advancement. The research mentioned that a master's is often required if you want to climb higher in certain fields.
Yeah, it is. In many professions, that master's degree is the key to unlocking those higher level positions. It can open doors to leadership roles, particularly in fields like, healthcare and education. Take teaching, for example. A teacher with a master's can qualify for administrative roles or specialize in a certain area, and that often means higher pay and greater responsibility.
That's interesting. So in some cases, it's not even just about increasing your earning potential. It's like a requirement for certain career paths.
They can be, yeah.
And speaking of careers, job security is a big concern these days. How does having a master's degree play into that?
Well, the research showed pretty consistently that master's degree holders have lower unemployment rates compared to those with just a bachelor's.
Right, that makes sense. The more specialized knowledge and skills you have, the more valuable you become, especially in a competitive job market.
Exactly. It's like you have that extra layer of armor in a world where jobs feel less and less secure.
So it's not just about earning more money, it's also about having a better chance of keeping a job. Period.
Exactly. It can give you a competitive edge and provide a sense of security in an ever-changing work environment.
Okay, and what about networking? Those connections you make in grad school, those have to be super valuable these days, right?
Oh, absolutely. Graduate programs, they're like networking hubs. You're surrounded by ambitious peers, experienced faculty, guest speakers, alumni who are leaders in their fields. In fact, the research mentioned that over 90% of MBA graduates said their program helps them expand their professional network.
Wow. 90%, that's huge.
Yeah, it's a powerful testament to the importance of building relationships during your master's program. Those connections can really open doors to opportunities you might never have found otherwise.
It's about more than just getting the degree, it's about joining a community.
Absolutely, and that community can be a source of support, mentorship, and opportunity throughout your entire career.
All right, so we've talked about career advancement, job security, the power of networking. But let's not forget about, arguably, the most important factor. Job satisfaction. You mentioned this earlier, but it seems like even grabs in fields with lower financial ROI, like education and the social sciences, they often report feeling really satisfied with their jobs.
It's a crucial point, and the research supports that. At the end of the day, finding work that is meaningful and fulfilling, that's incredibly valuable, even if it doesn't come with the highest paycheck.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
And graduates in these fields, they often find deep satisfaction in, making a difference in people's lives or contributing to a cause they believe in.
So it's really about finding that sweet spot between your passions, your skills, and, the reality of what's out there in the job market.
It is, and that's what makes this whole decision so interesting.
I know, right? It's a big one.
Yeah, it's not just about crunching the numbers. It's about understanding what truly motivates you and finding a path that aligns with your values.
Okay, so we've covered a lot, haven't we? We've talked about the financial costs, the potential returns, the differences between those STEM and non-STEM fields, and the importance of those non-economic benefits, like career advancement, job satisfaction. But now it's time to bring it back to you, the listener.
This is where your personal goals and aspirations really come into focus.
So what matters most to you? What are your career aspirations? What are you passionate about? What kind of lifestyle do you want? These are the big questions you need to ask yourself as you weigh the pros and cons of pursuing a master's degree.
And remember, there is no one-size-fits-all answer.
Absolutely. The right choice for one person may not be the best fit for another.
Right.
This deep dive has given you tons of information to think about. But at the end of the day, the decision is yours.
You got it. Take some time to reflect on what we've discussed and don't be afraid to, seek out guidance. Talk to meme whores, career counselors, people who are already working in the field you're interested in. Their insights can be incredibly valuable. Absolutely.
Okay, and as you think about this big decision, I want to leave you with a thought-provoking question. What would you study if money were no object? Sometimes that answer, it can reveal what really motivates you, and maybe even point you in the right direction.
I love that question. Really gets to the heart of it.
Right. It's like giving yourself permission to dream a little, even when you're making a big, life-changing decision. Food for thought, right? But before we let you go, I'm curious.
It really can. Sometimes, we get so caught up in the practical stuff, we forget about the things we really love.
So true. Speaking of practical stuff, I wanted to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, about how not all master's degrees are created equal, even within the same field.
Right.
Like we were talking about MBAs, and how the reputation of the school can make a big difference when it comes to salary. But does that apply to other fields too?
Absolutely. It's not just about getting the degree, it's about getting it from the right place. The research emphasized the importance of looking at the specific program and its reputation within the industry. Like, for instance, let's say you want to get a master's in engineering. Graduating from a top-ranked engineering school, one with strong industry connections, that could significantly boost your earning potential compared to a lesser-known program.
Okay, so it's not just about the piece of paper, it's about the whole package, like the school, the program.
The whole experience.
Okay, so we've talked about the financial ROI, the non-economic benefit, and the importance of choosing the right program. But I'm curious, are there any hidden costs or unexpected challenges people should be aware of when considering a master's?
Yeah, that's a great question, and there are definitely things people don't always consider. One of the big ones is the time commitment. It takes a lot of time to really thrive in a rigorous master's program. You're not just paying tuition, you're also investing a lot of time and energy.
Right, it's a serious commitment, so it's more than just like showing up for class a couple times a week and cramming for exams. What are we really talking about here?
A lot of programs, they demand long hours. Studying, research, and often internships or fieldwork on top of that. And that's all on top of any other commitments you might have, like a job or family.
Right, so you really need to be able to dedicate the time.
You do. It takes dedication, discipline, and often some sacrifices in your personal life. It can be really tough to balance a demanding master's program with, your other obligations.
I think a lot of people, especially those who've been out of school for a while, they might have this romanticized idea of going back to school.
I know what you mean.
But the reality is it could be pretty intense.
It can be. And speaking of challenges, another thing that people often underestimate is the emotional toll that graduate studies can take. The pressure, the competition, the fear of failure, it can all weigh on you. And then if you're relocating for your program, you have to deal with all the adjustments of being in a new environment away from your support system.
Yeah, that's a lot to handle. It sounds like resilience and self-care are pretty important.
Essential. It's so important to have a strong support network, whether it's friends, family, a therapist, to help you navigate the ups and downs.
It's like having a team of Sherpas helping you carry the load.
Like that.
All right, so we've talked about the hidden costs, the emotional challenges. Anything else people should be thinking about as they weigh this decision?
One last thought I would offer is don't be afraid to think outside the box. Outside the traditional master's degree box, I mean.
So you're saying skip the master's altogether?
Not necessarily, but remember that the world of education, it's constantly evolving. There are so many different ways to learn and grow professionally these days.
That's true.
Think about online courses, boot camps, professional certifications, even micro-credentials. Sometimes those options can be more affordable, more flexible, and more tailored to your specific career goals than a traditional master's degree.
Right, you're expanding the menu of options. A full-blown master's might not be the right fit for everyone, but there could be other ways to reach those souls, gain those valuable skills.
Absolutely. It's about exploring the possibilities and finding what aligns with your individual circumstances, your learning style, and your aspirations.
Okay, I love that. Before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something you mentioned before, about talking to mentors and career counselors. I feel like they could play a key role in helping people make this decision.
Oh, definitely. Talking to people who are already working in your field of interest, they can give you really valuable insight into what those jobs are actually like day to day, the skills that are most in demand, whether a master's is really necessary.
It's like getting a sneak peek behind the curtain, right?
Exactly. A career counselor can help you figure out what are your strengths, your interests, your values, then help you figure out which career paths might be a good fit and what kind of education or training you would need to get there.
So they can be like a guide, helping you navigate through all the career options and educational pathways.
That's a good way to put it. They can help you create a roadmap that's just for you, based on your goals and circumstances.
So helpful. Okay, so as we come to the end of part 2 of this deep dive, I want to bring it back to you, the listener. We've explored a lot of complex information about this whole ROI of master's degrees thing. But this is a personal decision.
100%. It's about more than just numbers on a spreadsheet.
Just about your dreams, your passions, your vision for your future. So, as you think about everything we've discussed, my challenge to you is don't just focus on the potential financial gains. Think about what kind of life you want to create, the kind of work that will bring you fulfillment, the impact you want to make on the world.
Beautifully said, and if pursuing a master's degree fits into that vision, then go for it with all your heart.
Love that. Okay, so that wraps up part 2 of this deep dive. Is there anything else you want to leave our listener with before we head into the final part of this episode?
Just this. Remember that education is a lifelong journey. It doesn't end with a degree. Stay curious, keep learning, and always be open to new possibilities.
Perfect. Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive. It's been awesome exploring this topic with you.
It's such an important topic.
It really is. And for our listeners who are clearly on that journey of, exploring their options and figuring out what they want to do, thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Absolutely.
And remember, if you're still feeling a little lost, don't be afraid to reach out to those career counselors or mentors we were talking about. They can be like a compass helping you chart the best course.
Great advice.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one key takeaway you hope our listeners walk away with today?
I'd say choosing to pursue a master's degree, it's a big decision, and it deserves careful thought. Weigh the financial implications, consider those non-economic benefits, and, most importantly, make sure it aligns with your passions and aspirations. It's not just about the degree itself, it's about the journey and the impact it'll have on your life.
It's about finding that sweet spot, right, where your skills and interests meet the needs of the world.
Exactly.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this episode of the Tech in 5. We hope you've enjoyed this exploration of master's degrees in ROI. Don't forget to subscribe for more tech dives into all sorts of fascinating topics. And until next time, keep diving deep.